O great Spirit, whose voice I hear in the wind, whose breath gives life to all the world. Hear me, I need your strength and wisdom. Let me walk in beauty and make my eyes ever behold the red and purple sunset. Make my hands respect the things you have made, and my ears sharp to hear your voice. Make me wise so that I may understand the things you have taught my people. Chief Yellowlark. Randy will light the chalice here in the sanctuary, and I invite you to light your own chalice and place it where it can be seen by all of us if you are able. The story of the Matrix connects all of us. There are rules, processes, and circles of responsibility in this world. And the story begins exactly where it is supposed to begin. We cannot skip any part. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind you at home to leave yourselves muted. However, we want you and whoever is with you to sing with Mary as big and loud as you like. Make it a joyous experience. For the rest of you here in the sanctuary, please wear a mask if you too wish to actively participate in singing the hymn. But first, the backstory. In the summer of 1979, a songwriter, poet, and activist named Carolyn McDade attended the Riverside Church Disarmament Conference in New York City. She, like many women at that time, was deeply involved in the anti-war movement. But most of the visible leaders at this one were men. And so when a devout Catholic feminist woman named Barbara Zanotti took her place at the microphone as the first speaker at this conference, Carolyn McDade was inspired. So inspired that she wrote a hymn based on the text of that speech. The name she gave that hymn was Creation of Peace. We refer to it as hymn 121, We'll Build a Land. So let's all sing the opening hymn, We'll Build a Land, number 121.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll be a land building up ancient cities, raising up devastations from old, restoring ruins of generations. Oh, we'll build a land where people so bold. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come sound from spirits once faint and once weak. We're like oaks of righteousness. Stand her people, oh come build the land, my people we sing. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Community of Cambria. We are glad you have joined us today, both live and on Zoom. We acknowledge that our UU Sanctuary stands on land that was originally occupied by coastal Chumash indigenous peoples, whose ancestors lived primarily in the San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. As a Unitarian Universalist community, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation inviting speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds to speak at our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a variety of topics and areas of interest to our community that connect with the UU 7 principles. Today's service centers around the first principle. We affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Reverence and respect for human nature is at the core of the Unitarian Universalist faith. We believe that all the dimensions of our being carry the potential to do good. We celebrate the gifts of being human, our intelligence and capacity for observation and reason, our senses and ability to appreciate beauty, our creativity, our feelings and emotions. We cherish our bodies as well as our souls. We can use our gifts to offer love, to work for justice, to heal injury, to create pleasure for ourselves and others. My name is Susan Landau, and I am your worship associate this morning. I would like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We're glad you've joined us this morning. And if you are not on our mailing list, please visit our website at www.uuccambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all of our activities. And please check out What's Happening, a weekly e-blast sent to our members and friends. This is a great way to keep up with the latest news in our community. And if you are not receiving What's Happening, you can subscribe on our website. And as a reminder, if you wish to see this or any of our past Zoom services, recordings of these services can be found on the UUCC website and also Facebook. The membership committee invites non-members to consider joining our community. Please contact Janet Cooper or a person on the board if you are interested. So again, good morning and welcome to everyone. The affirmation is both a recognition of the nature of our community as well as a promise we make and aspire to. Let us now recite our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. We set aside this time for any short announcements that would be of interest to our UU community members and friends. Please keep your items short and to the point. For any items that need more explanation, please contact the person after the service to be respectful of everyone's time. If you are in the sanctuary and have an announcement, please raise your hand and I will invite you to come forward and use the lectern. For our remote participants, please raise your Zoom hand. When Andy calls your name, please unmute yourself and then speak. Janet.
Okay, good morning. Here, whoop, I dropped my note. I did leave it in the mess. Okay, okay, now, I'd like to make two short announcements. First, I am looking for a few volunteers to fill out our congregation's Creek to Coastside cleanup team. The teams this year are limited to 5 people, and as we probably will have members from different households, we will observe social distancing recommendations. Looks like we're going to be cleaning up the southern entrance to the Morrow Strand Park on a date to be determined by our team, and we can do it any date between September 16th through the 30th. So if you enjoy spending time outdoors and helping to clear trash from our beautiful Central Coast home, please plan to join us. And just as a little side note, during the Creek to Coast cleanups, we actually count everything we pick up and record it. And in the past, cigarette butts have been number 1, which I think our highway crew can confirm. And second, I am happy to announce that the Social and Environmental Justice team donated $200 from our committee's annual budget to the Stuff the Bus program, which is organized by the local United Way. This donation was made on behalf of the entire congregation. If you haven't already donated, please consider making a donation. I know they're still looking for a little more money. Their goal is to ensure that every needy student in our county starts school with the supplies they need to have a successful school year. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Andy, do we have anyone out there in Zoom land with an announcement?
Yes, we do. Nancy Tolan, I believe, has an announcement.
Unmuted.
Hey, so it's Robert and Nancy actually this time. So I'm Nancy. And on Wednesday, the Moving Towards Racial Justice group will be meeting by Zoom at 7 o'clock to talk about microaggressions. I've got a few very short videos from 1 minute to 3.5 is the longest. And then some discussions we could talk about. So the Zoom link will be in this week's newsletter, or you can contact me and I'll send you the Zoom link.
Thank you. On Thursday, August the 12th, the hiking group will hike Point Buchan, south of Montaña de Oro State Park. We'll meet at 10 a.m. at the Coon Creek parking lot at the south end of the park. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact Nancy and me. We're in the directory. We do anticipate that we'll be out there for lunch. The entire hike is about 6.5 miles. So bring a sack lunch if you care to lunch with us. Thank you.
Okay, I see another hand raised. Mary Ann, would you please unmute yourself and make your announcement?
Hi, everybody. Just wanted you to know that the Poetry Spoken Word is on hiatus for August, but we will resume in September. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ann. Dolores, I see you're waving your hand. Please unmute yourself and make your announcement.
Thank you. I couldn't get my Zoom hand to raise for some reason. Okay, so on Thursday, we have a operations committee meeting at 6 o'clock on Zoom. So see you there. And anybody who wants to join the committee, operations committee, please come to our meeting. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Just checking one more time. Okay, that seems to be it. Back to you, Susan.
Thank you, Andy. Next week, Marianne Anderson will be reading The Missing Remnants by Reverend Sophia Betancourt. Sharing together some of our personal and significant joys and concerns brings us closer together as a faith community. We invite you to share the milestones that are deeply felt as part of your personal life, but please be mindful and considerate of all who come to worship with us this morning. This is a time of community building. The collective flames of these virtual candles embody all the joys and sorrows which may have gone unspoken today, but are also deeply felt in our community. The first reading is a minister's message by Reverend Rita Capezzi, Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Mankato, Minnesota. You may have heard the term cancel culture used on the political left and on the political right in situations of grievance, where one side asserts that change is an effort to control discourse and values. You might have heard the term used in relation to Dr. Seuss titles and potato head toys. You might have heard it about Confederate statues and the governor of New York. Depending on the situation, I find myself very reactive, more than ready to participate in grievance thinking, where I get into a fight and backlash mode. And so I have recently made a commitment to pause and listen, to build some stages into my reactions, so as to include reflection and learning before responding. I'll use Dr. Seuss as an example, and I encourage you to try this when you hear news that particularly triggers or offends you. Oh my God, for heaven's sake, they're canceling Dr. Seuss. What can possibly be wrong with Dr. Seuss books? I love Green Eggs and Ham. I love Cat in the Hat, and I love the Sneetches. I read them to my children with love, such good messages. So wait, what are they saying? Let me get the facts straight. Okay, the infamous they, is not the government or the school boards. They is the Dr. Seuss Trust and Publisher. They are reflecting on 6 little red titles, including On Beyond Zebra, Scrambled Egg Supper. I never even heard of them. Do some research. Okay, what's really going on? These 6 titles contain images of people of color, Asian descent, and Black people, which cast them in a belittling light, both in the words and in the images. I see the reporting, and it goes beyond sound bites. Yes, these books may reflect a period of time, but they harm people, even some people I know and care about. In the words of Maya Angelou, do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better. What do I think? Is this a problem for me? No. I want to affirm the worth and dignity of all people. As participants within the interdependent web, what hurts another affects me too. I want to reduce harm and destructive judgment, and so I support the end to publishing these titles. I am mindful here, and I encourage you to also be, of my systemic privilege as I make this commitment. As cis hetero, neurotypical, currently able-bodied, white, highly educated woman, I am at the intersection of a lot of cultural power, and my ability to pause and reflect is conditioned by this privilege. Not everyone has that cultural power, and some of us are more subject to harm than I am. May I remember, and may we all remember, to pause and reflect and also acknowledge the power differences among us. As you remember as well that you are loved, you are worthy, you are welcome, and you are needed. May you feel it so, and may it be so. Let us enter a place of peace and serenity where you are one with your spiritual being. Be at peace within your space where the absence of all that is temporal is its most cherished gift. Let us enter the stillness. Please come back now. The second reading is a poem titled Naming by Joy Harjo. I call my sisters to dress for the stomp dance, as all the little creatures hum and sing in the thick grass around the grounds. Lightning bugs are tiny stars dancing in the river of dusk. Our stomachs are full of meat and fry bread and the talk of aunts and uncles. Beautiful fire at the center of the dance, and the dusk has been lit. We lace up our turtle shells so we can dance into the circle. And in this spirit world is the grocery store over the hill and all the houses, the river, the sky, and the highway. We have been here forever, say our mother, our father. And this is the name we call ourselves. I tell my sisters, this name gives our legs the music to shake the shells. A name that is unspeakable by those who disrespect us. A name with power to thread through us, the dark to dawn, and leads us faithfully to the stars. Some people think This Land Is Your Land should replace the Star-Spangled Banner as our country's national anthem. Other people think its message is wholly one of American colonialism. Woody Guthrie wrote this song in 1940 because he was sick and tired of the blind patriotism of Irving Berlin's God Bless America, which he felt did not address this extreme poverty and so many in the aftermath of the Great Depression. In 1964, Buffy Sainte-Marie said during an interview, I was asked to do Pete Seeger's TV show that featured folk performances, Rainbow Quest. And when everybody was supposed to come out and do a European-style finale and hold hands and sing, This Land Is Your Land, I just cried through it. I thought, this used to be my land, and you guys aren't even smart enough to be sensitive to this? Hello? In 1973, Pete Seeger, who many UUs claim as one of their own, wrote a lyric to include the people who lived on this land before the Europeans came. We'll sing Pete's unpublished lyrics this morning. This year, Jennifer Lopez, who is Puerto Rican American, chose to sing a medley of This Land Is Your Land and America the Beautiful for the presidential inauguration of Joe Biden. For her, it was a symbol of justice and inclusion for all. For many members of the tribal nations, it was a painful reminder of the past. Please join us in singing This Land Is Your Land by Woody Guthrie.
As I was walking that river of highway, I saw above me and in the skyway, I saw below me a golden valley. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Maybe you've been working as hard as you're able, but you just got crumbs from the rich man's table. And maybe you're thinking, was it truth or fable, that this land was made for you and me? Woodland and grassland and river shoreline, to everything living, even little microbes, through fur and feather, we're all here together. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, but it once was my land, until we sold you Manhattan You pushed our nations to the reservations. This land was stole by you from me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island. From the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me.
Today, we continue with our annual Summer Sermons by Other People series. During the month of August, members of the UU community of Cambria will present sermons written and delivered by UU ministers or other prominent members of the religious and academic communities. Our readers are required to seek permission to present these sermons, and the sermon will be introduced by the reader. Today's sermon is titled This American Indian Life by Reverend Jennifer Youngson Rue, to be read by Mary Schwalbe. The sermon covers the following principles. Principle 1, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Principle 2, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Principle 3, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Principle 6, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Principle 7, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Mary Schwalbe.
Good morning. The definition of cancel culture, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, is the practice or tendency of engaging in mass canceling as a way of expressing disapproval and exerting social pressure. And according to the Cambridge Dictionary, a way of behaving in a society or group, especially on social media, in which it is common to completely reject and stop supporting someone because they have said something or done something that offends you. Jennifer Rue is an affiliate minister of the Unitarian Church in Charleston, South Carolina. She received her Master's of Divinity from the Starr King School in Berkeley and was ordained by the Congregation of Williamsburg, Virginia, UU Church, which she served for 10 years through 2016. Since then, she has done hospital chaplaincy work, currently serving the Roper St. Francis Hospital System in Charleston, South Carolina. Rev. Jen was born in Seoul, South Korea, and immigrated to the United States when she was 6 years old. She grew up in Toledo, Ohio. I often turn to Google when I'm troubled by a topic I don't quite understand. In this case, it was the term cancel culture, which bugs the heck out of me and is bandied about with passion and furor by politicians and media pundits. I typed in UU cancel culture sermon, and I found the sermon I will read today. This American Indian Life was written and delivered by Reverend Jennifer Youngson Rue to the Williamsburg UUs in 2009. In 2021, its message is still very timely and speaks to the real cancel culture, and now the words of Rev. Rue. We'll Build a Land has always been one of my favorite hymns because it speaks of our responsibility to move the world toward freedom and justice. This hymn inspires us to act in the name of peace, to stand on the side of love, to reach out with our hands and speak out with our voices. We are not waiting for a supernatural being to come and save us from ourselves. We are not waiting for the second coming to establish justice on earth. We are the hands and feet of God. We are the ones we've been waiting for. The words of this hymn are based on the central Israelite story of the Exodus, a story about a people's deliverance from slavery into the promised land. This story describes the human experience of captivity. in both as literal bondage and a spiritual one. The words portray the promised land as a blank canvas, a way to start over, an empty space where possibility is born. For thousands of years, these words have given hope to the Jewish people and Christians all over the world. Those who have suffered oppression and injustice have found spiritual liberation in this narrative of deliverance, particularly for African American and Latino American Christians. The liberation theology that grew out of the Exodus theme assured them that God was on their side, the side of the powerless, the oppressed, all the afflicted, all those who mourn. Recently, some of my UU ministry colleagues who are Native American taught me that the imagery in this hymn does not speak to everyone in the same way. Not all the afflicted can find solace in this story. Not all those who mourn can place their faith in the promised land. Many of our friends and neighbors who are American Indians hear the Exodus story as one of conquest, not deliverance. The God of Exodus does not lead the Israelites to an empty land, but to one that is already occupied by indigenous peoples, the Canaanites. And what was God's instructions to the Israelites? Make peace with them? Live beside them in harmony? No. According to chapter 7, verse 1 and 2 of the book of Deuteronomy, when the Lord your God brings you into the land which you are entering to take possession of it, then you must utterly destroy them. You shall make no covenant with them and show no mercy to them. When the first preachers came to proclaim the gospel on this new land, they often referred to the Native Americans as Canaanites, sending the message that if Indians could not be converted to Christianity, their annihilation would be justified. Because this message was based on the fundamental biblical narrative that everyone knew, it became part of the American story. As the new inhabitants moved deeper into North America, this religious narrative became a central theme in the westward expansion. Embedded in the minds of those who shaped policies for this fledgling nation was the belief that this land was given by God and the existing inhabitants were to be assimilated or destroyed. As I listened to my colleagues, I realized that I knew very little about American Indian history and their current day struggles. So I started to read and listen. The more I heard, the more I wanted to know. The more I learned, the more questions I had. And the answers broke my heart. Not just for our American Indian neighbors, but for everyone who stands just at the edge of the American dream, for the daily triumph of greed over generosity, domination over cooperation. We hear the life of American Indians through our history books, museums, and folklore. It's as though Indians no longer exist in our modern society. They have been silenced, marginalized, commercialized, and objectified. One example of this can be found in our own Commonwealth, where the Virginia Council on Indians is managed through the Secretary of Natural Resources, along with fish and wildlife, streams and fields, and natural history. No wonder some Virginia Indians have taken up the model. We're still here. For 400 years, Virginia has had a complicated relationship with the indigenous people of this land. Even though they were the first tribes, they have yet to be recognized by the US government. A bit of good news, though, last month, the House passed a bill and sent it on to the Senate. One of the complicating factors in pursuing federal recognition has been the ongoing legacy of the 34 bureaucratic reign of a white supremacist named Walter Ashby Plecker. Walter Plecker was a registrar of Virginia's Bureau of Vital Statistics, recording births, marriages, and deaths from 1912 to 1946. Plecker led the effort to purify the white race in Virginia by forcing Indians and other non-whites to classify themselves as Blacks. There were only two boxes to check, either white or Black. If you were Indian, you could not claim your heritage. You could not claim your identity. You could not claim your name. It was genocide by paperwork. As an aside, as of July 23rd, 2018, 574 tribal entities are formally recognized by the US and eligible for funding and services from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. According to Wikipedia, in California alone, there are still more than 100 tribes or bands waiting for federal recognition. Now back to Rev. Rue. There is another kind of bloodless genocide, to kill off a people's culture identity by forced assimilation. In the 1870s, the US government separated small children from their families, shipping them off to Indian boarding schools. One of those schools was the Carlisle Indian School, located on an abandoned military post in Pennsylvania. An Army captain named Richard Platt operated this school. His ideas about educating children came from his experience running a prison for Indians. Here was his philosophy, quote, "A great general has said that the only good Indian is a dead one. In a sense, I agree with that sentiment, but only in this, that all the Indian there is in the race should be dead. Kill the Indian in him and save the man," end quote. By the mid-20th century, children were still being sent to Indian schools. That's really not that long ago. As recently as 1945, Bill Wright, a Butwin Indian, was sent to the Stewart Indian School in Nevada. He was just 6 years old. Wright remembers matrons bathing him in kerosene and shaving his head. Students at federal boarding schools were forbidden to express their culture, everything from wearing long hair to speaking even a single Indian word. Wright said he lost not only his language, but also his Native American name. When he finally came home, his grandmother called him by his given name, Tutum. "That's not my name," he said to her. "My name is Billy. That's what they told me." "We have been here forever," say our mother, our father. "This is the name we call ourselves." I tell my sister, "This is the name that gives our legs the music to shake the shells. A name that is unspeakable by those who disrespect us. A name with power to thread us through the dark to dawn and lead us faithfully to the stars." It is tempting to say, well, that was a long time ago and those ideas have been buried with the past. We look around today and find great affinity and respect for the Native American culture. Over the years, Native American spirituality has gained popularity with non-Indians. They are attracted to the mystery of sweat lodges, the Sundance, and powwows. One Oglala man observed that 100 years ago, his people practiced their sacred ceremonies in secret, quoted from On the Res by Ian Fraser, for fear that white people finding out and shutting them down. Today, the fear is of white people finding out and wanting to join in, end quote. Unitarian Universalists often use the words of Native American sages in our worship services. We appreciate Native American spirituality because it aligns with our respect for all beings and the interconnected web. We will play the music, invoke the prayers, and hang dream catchers from our rear view window, but very few of us take the time to learn our shared history and listen to the struggles of our American Indian neighbors. The trauma of being removed from ancestral homelands, forced to assimilate to a foreign culture, and denied one's core identity may have happened decades ago, but the lifespan of a spiritual wound is longer than any one life. Deep pain, internalized shame, and rage reverberate through generations. What can I do to stand in solidarity with my Indian neighbors, friends, and colleagues? I will keep asking questions. I will keep listening. I will keep learning. And when I lead worship, using the words of Native Americans, I will find out where the words came from and connect them to a people and place. The chalice lighting words this morning were from Crazy Brave, a memoir by Joy Harjo of the Muskogee Creek Nation. She is currently serving her second term as the 23rd Poet Laureate, of the United States. So, do you want to support Indian country? Here's a short list of native-run organizations and nonprofits that I found on Joy Harjo's website. Honor the Earth uses Indigenous wisdom, music, art, and the media to raise awareness and support for Indigenous environmental issues. First Nations Development Institute strengthens Native American communities and economics and provides support to Native nations and Native-led organizations as they respond and recover to COVID-19. Seventh Generation Fund for Indigenous Peoples mobilizes resources for crisis-impacted Indigenous communities throughout the world in rapid response to COVID-19. Offers programs to protect land and water, create community vitality, and foster thriving women. NDN Collective is dedicated to building Indigenous power through organization, activism, philanthropy, grant making, capacity building, and narrative change, and creates sustainable solutions on Indigenous terms. Indigenous Environmental Network. Its mission is to protect the sacredness of Earth Mother from contamination and exploitation by strengthening, maintaining, and respecting Indigenous teachings and natural laws. American Indian College Fund invests in Native students and tribal college education to transform lives and communities. More than ever, Native students and communities are struggling to overcome new challenges presented by the COVID-19 crisis. Muskogee Nation Youth System empowers the youth by connecting to culture, community, and resources. Native Governance Center provides Native people with leadership development, tribal governance support, and community engagement. Tribal Law and Policy Institute provides free publication resources, comprehensive training, and technical assistance for Native nations and tribal justice systems in pursuit of a vision to empower Native communities to create and control their own institutions for the benefit of all community members, now and for future generations. The 2009 GA General Assembly was held in Salt Lake City, Utah. The UUA president at that time was the Reverend William Sinkford. I encourage you to go on their website and view his 7-minute video address entitled "The Utes and the Unitarians." Now back to Rev Rue. The Ute Indians are descended from the Shoshone people. Before the arrival of European settlers, they roamed over vast areas of Colorado, Utah, and New Mexico. At one point in the mid-1800s, a treaty with the United States guaranteed the Utes 12 million acres in Colorado and Utah in perpetuity. Today, they own just 1 million acres. The remaining portion of the Uinta Ure Reservation, which is the second largest Indian reservation in the United States, covers over 4.5 million acres. It is controlled by the Bureau of Land Management. The Unitarians have an interesting connection to the Ute Indians. In 1871, President Grant charged the nation's churches to take on the education of Indian children. Their charge was to Christianize the Indians to aid in their civilization. That policy ended 7 years later after a violent uprising resulted in the death of Nathan Meeker, the Unitarian agent to the Ute people. Nathan Meeker was from Ohio, and he came to the Ute with a dream of building a utopian agricultural community. He believed that farming was the solution to the so-called Indian problem. But the real problem was that the Ute Indians, were not farmers. They were hunters and fishers. They were people of the mountain. The Ute captured horses that escaped from Spanish settlements in the mid-1600s. On horseback, they traveled wide stretches of mountain lands where frost covered the ground 12 months a year. Nathan Meeker's utopian vision, his worldview shaped by the narratives of his European Christian culture, collided with the Ute. A violent border skirmish between the U.S. cavalry and the Ute warriors led to the removal of 4 Ute bands from Colorado to a small corner of eastern Utah. In a letter home, one cavalry soldier wrote that within days of the Ute Indian removal, white settlers were already laying down railroad tracks and laying out towns. One of those towns was Grand Junction, Colorado, which was opened for settlement the very day the Ute were removed from their ancestral homeland. I have no doubt that the Unitarian men held good and noble intentions in their relations with the Ute. I have read firsthand accounts from the Unitarian leaders of the time, and they seemed sincere in their desire to help. But they were trapped in a mindset that understood civilized society in just one narrow way. Are we trapped in a similar mindset? In some ways, I think we are. I return to hymn 121. We Unitarian Universalists have a tendency to see ourselves as the rescuers. We'll build it, we'll bind up the broken, we'll bring good tidings to the afflicted and all those who mourn. But let us not forget that we are also broken, and we are afflicted, and we mourn. We are captives of our stuck patterns of thinking and doing. We are captives of drink and drugs and overfunctioning. This song is as much for us as it is for anyone, and is worth singing because it strengthens our moral imagination and helps us to envision a future where we, who are faint and weak in spirit, stand strong, and justice shall roll down like waters. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. The morning offering will now be given and received. Please keep in mind that our congregation is entirely self-governed by the democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all of the financial support for our many ministries from among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and our institutional well-being. You are invited to participate in the blessing of giving. For those of you at home, please use one of the methods shown on the screen. Thank you. Our thanks for all gifts given and received for the work of this community. Let us now sing the doxology.
From all that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land, by every tongue.
The final hymn this morning is We Are Circling, with new verses by Buffy St. Marie, who is a member of the Cree First Nation and who wrote about this song, "Growing and changing is the key to survival and happiness." Please join us in singing We Are Circling by Buffy St. Marie.
We are circling, circling together. We are singing, singing our heart song. This is family, this is unity, this is celebration, this is sacred. We are spiraling, spiraling together, onward, inward, creature to creation, holy mystery, Mother Earth, childbirth. This is celebration, this is sacred. We are circling, circling together. We are singing, singing our heart song. This is family, this is unity, this is celebration, this is sacred. We are spinning, spinning all together. We are singing over the rainbow. This is harmony, this is community, this is celebration, this is sacred. We are circling, circling together. We are singing, singing our heart song. This is family, this is unity, this is celebration, this is sacred. We are ripening, ripening together. Babies, bozos, elders, and angels. This is how we grow. This is how we get to know. This is family. This is sacred. We are circling, circling together. We are singing, singing our heart song. This is family, this is unity, this is celebration, this is sacred. We are circling, circling together. We are singing, singing our heart song. This is family, this is unity, this is celebration, this is sacred.
Thank you, Mary. Let us now recite the valediction. We extinguish the flame of this chalice, and we know that the light of truth and love and the warmth of this community go with us until we meet again. As we extinguish the chalices here in the sanctuary, please extinguish your chalice at home. You are welcome to stay after the benediction for questions and comments. Mary.
I will repeat the words of Maya Angelou quoted from the first reading. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Thank you.